Alright, I am here. Just give me one moment. Also, I don't know if you could hear Bella. She was very cute. Oops. Hold on. I'm just testing something to make sure that since no one's here, making sure that the sound is okay. I always record myself beforehand, which I think is a pretty good indication, but I like to be sure that everything worked out. Okay, it's alright. I can hear it. Alright, welcome to anyone who is here. I'm also here. Yes, today is going to be the Dracula August stream, or at least part of it. As I said at the end of the July stream, there's a lot in August. It's almost every day. And while some of them are short, there's not even as many short ones as there are in July. So that makes me think that we might be doing half today and then half tomorrow or some other day. I wish that I... Hello, Bo. You're coming to join us today, too? I like that. Come here. Let's see, can I show him? Can I show him jumping up? Come on, Bo. Come on, Bo, kitty. Baby. Come here. You just gonna sit? You're gonna sit where they can't see you. He's right here. Come here, Boo. I bet. Oh, there we go. There we go. There's the kitty. There he is. Also, if you think I'm wearing Halloween pants too early, I wear these year round. So, I'm wearing them too early as in... I'm wearing them at Christmas, January, February. I'm wearing them whenever. Hello, Death said. Welcome. Great to have you here. But yes, I was just saying that I'm hoping to do all of August today, but there is a lot in August. There's an entry for nearly every day, and they're generally not as short as I'd like them to be for there being so many. So it's likely that I'll have to cut this in half, but we're hoping. We're hoping that we'll get through it all. So something exciting might happen today, also depending on how far we get. I believe that we are very close to the part that I read before. So I have read part of Dracula, and I have never read past, I got to the part where Lucy's starting to act a bit strange. And that's as far as I remember getting. And so we are getting there. And I was starting to, as I'm copying them down and sort of seeing words and entries and stuff, I might be seeing stuff I haven't seen before. And the last entry is a letter from Arthur. And I don't think I ever saw a second letter from Arthur. So I think we might get to the stuff I haven't read today, which would be awesome, because then I can start reacting truly for the first time, and not for the second or third for some parts. So that'll be real cool if we get there. I did also see that there's unfortunately more accent stuff, though. So we got some exciting stuff upcoming. But also some not as exciting stuff upcoming. If you weren't here last time, there's a part of this book where there's an accent that a character has, and their words are written in their... I want to say transliterated, but I don't think that's the right word. But they're written down, in that way. And, it makes it very hard to understand. And I honestly don't even know what accent it is to voice it correctly. So, yeah, it's gonna be a time. Alright. But yes, I should put it on the screen. I could have had it on screen the whole time. But yeah.
Hi, kitty. Bello, do you want to join? Here's the Bella. Here's the Bella. Here, I can move this little notebook so you can sit on the desk if you want. But you can also stay here if you want.
Alrighty. Let us begin. August 1st. Log of the Demeter. 1st of August. 2 days of fog, and not a sail sighted. I had hoped when in the English Channel to be able to signal for help or get in somewhere. Not having power to work sails, have to run before wind. Dare not lower, as could not raise them again. We seem to be drifting to some terrible doom. Mate now more demoralized than either of men. His stronger nature seems to have worked inwardly against himself. Men are beyond fear, working stolidly and patiently, with minds made up to worst. They are Russian, he Romanian. Okay, I actually got an answer on what... Hi, I'm glowing. On what ethnicity... Is that the right word? Ethnicity? I don't know. What country they're from. So that it might indeed be a Russian accent, and I'm wishing desperately that I had looked up a video on how to do a Russian accent before I got on today, because then I think there are a couple more entries, and I would have tried harder to do that. I can vaguely do a little bit of one, maybe, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so not much to say about that one. They're just losing hope, and that would be pretty scary. Like, not only are you on a boat where people keep disappearing, and you don't know where they're disappearing to or anything like that, and then you're like, I don't have enough manpower to put the sails up and down, so they're just up, and we're sailing. Can't really control very well where we're going. Seems like we're going to doom. Oh, man. Yeah, and then I guess that's the other thing, is that it reminds you just how difficult it is to power. I don't know if that's a man, maybe, to man a ship like this. That, yeah, you can't do it on your own, and it is wild to think about how if you don't have enough people, you literally can't raise and lower the sails. But anyways, and it is interesting how, like, at the beginning, the first mate is like, oh, like, shut up about your dumb superstitions. And then now he's the one who's, like, all demoralized, and everybody else is working hard. Alright. Mina Murray's journal, the 1st of August. I came up here an hour ago with Lucy, and we had a most interesting walk with my old friend, and the 2 others who always come and join him. I assume she's talking about the accented guy, and then the other guys. He's evidently the Sir Oracle of them, and I should think must have been, in his time, a most dictatorial person. He will not admit anything, and downfaces everybody. If he can't out-argue them, he bullies them, and then takes their silence for agreement with his views. Lucy was looking sweetly pretty in her white lawn frock. She has got a beautiful color since she has been here. Goodness! Okay. I don't know why she does that. Like, I'll be holding her and she'll meow, and, like, she doesn't try to get out of my arms or anything. Like, she meows like she's upset, but then she doesn't squirm or scratch or anything. I'm like, do you want down? And did you just want to say that? Anyways. Oh, kitty. Okay, good girl. I noticed that the old men did not lose any time in coming up and sitting near her when we sat down. She's so sweet with old people. I think they all fell in love with her on the spot. Even my old man succumbed and did not contradict her, but gave me double share instead. I got him on the subject of legends, and he went off at once into a sort of sermon. I must try and remember it and put it down. It's especially weird knowing that Mina is, like, writing this down and trying to remember it, and she's like, gotta include the accent. unless she herself couldn't understand him, and she's just like writing down as what she understood the words to be, which is more funny. But anyways, I don't know what Sir Oracle means. I assume it's a reference to something. Maybe the thing that she referenced last time. And it's funny that, like, I don't know if Mina's just a particularly nice person, but she's like, oh man, like, he's really dictatorial, he's like mean to people, he tries to out-argue them or bully them, and then when people are silent, he thinks they agree with him, and it's like, but she also kind of seems to be talking about him like he's a nice old man she enjoys hanging out with, and it's like, I feel like he's more of a pest than somebody you enjoy, and I don't know if she's just being nice and not saying that she does not enjoy his presence, or if she doesn't mind all of this. And then it's a little creepy. I don't know. It seems a little creepy that, like, we have a girl who is either half their age or less than half their age, and they're like, she hot, let's go sit with her, you know? It seems like everybody thinks Lucy is hot. She had 3 proposals, and then even the old men are coming up to her immediately. Oh no, man. Even Dracula likes her, come to think of it. Okay, it's funny that she just interprets it like, oh, she's so sweet with old people. It's like, 3 proposals, Mina. Everybody likes her, not just old people. And I think they like her in a particular way. Also funny that she calls him my old man. Alright. Time to get into it. It be all fool talk, lock, stock, and barrel. That's what it be, and naught else. Then bands and wafts and boghosts and barnguests and boggles and all meant them is only fit to set barons and dizzy women of Beltrin. Oh boy, this is so much worse than last time. If you know what any of this means, like, I know some of the words, you know, like barns, I think, even now that I say that, I think even that might be wrong. But yeah, if you know what these sentences are, do tell me in the chat. But anyways, they be nowt but air blebs. And then, and all grims and signs and warnings be all invented by parsons and ilsome book bodies and railway touters and skier and scunner halflings, and to get folks to do something that they don't other inclined to do. I think I'm getting southern, and I do not think he's southern, but I don't know what accent to give him. Okay, I want to actually, I think last time I read the whole thing and then went through it, but I think I'm going to go through it more meticulously this time, because I'm struggling even more. So it's all fool talk. Like, don't pay attention to it. And not would be not. And then I don't, like, so bands and wafts and boghosts and barguests and boggles. Like, ghost is the only word I recognize. So I guess he's talking about, like, these supernatural things. They're only, like, old wives' tales, I think he's saying. Yeah, they're all signs and warnings. They're just people trying to freak you out. They're invented by parsons and I don't know what book bodies is, and railway touters. Yeah, so it's all just like invented stuff to get people to do things they don't want to do, or like if you ask them to do it, they wouldn't do it. Okay. It makes me ireful to think of them. There we go. That's something I can understand. Why, it's them that, not content with printing lies on paper and preaching them out pulpits, does want to be cutting them on the tombstones. Okay, that was more understandable. Look here, all around you, and what art you will. Whatever you will. All them steens holding up their heads as well as they can out of their pride as can't, simply tumbling down with the weight of lies wrote on them. Here lies the body, or sacred to the memory, wrote on all of them. And yet, nigh half of them, there bean't no bodies at all. And the memories them bean't cared a pinch of snuff about, much less sacred. And lies, all of them. Nothing but lies of one kind or another. Gog. But it'll be a square scouterment at the day of judgment when they come tumbling up their death sarks. all joot together and trying to drag their tombstones with them to prove how good they was. Some of them trembling and dithering with their hands that dozen and slippy from a lion in the sea that they can't even keep their grip of them. I'm sorry. If I knew what it was, I would do a better job with it. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, it makes them powerful to think of them. They're not content to lie in the paper, preach. So I guess he's talking about like stuff written on the tombstones, that there's like superstitions on them. Oh, so this was stones. Holding up so all the stones holding up their heads as well as they can out of their pride is a can't. Don't know what that means. Simply tumbling with the weight of the lies wrote on them. So it's kind of a metaphor of like the gravestones are heavy on the people buried there because there are lies written on them. Here lies the body, or sacred to the memory, wrote on all of them. Yet deny half of them, there be no bodies at all. Okay, so he's saying that's interesting. That's quite an interesting lie that I did not think that's where this is going. That it's saying, here lies a body, and there is not a body in there. And the memories of them, you didn't care to pinch enough about much so sacred. So they weren't good people, or people don't care about them, so they're not sacred to them. That feels more sad if there is a body in there. Like, I feel like it's fine to say sacred to the memory. Even if they were generally hated, there's probably somebody that loved them that wrote that on their tombstone. Though I guess it is a thing where it's like, yeah, if you saw somebody who was a horrible person and then you walked by their tombstone, it's like sacred memory, and it's like, ugh. So I guess it makes sense. Alright. Okay, and then I assume this means, my god, I don't know why it would be a G, why that would be the accent. Don't know what's scouterment here. I guess maybe like, oh, they'll be confused. So, like, saying on the day of judgment, when people are resurrected, they're gonna come out of their tombstones all grouped together. I don't know why they'd be all grouped together, because he's saying there's like no bodies, and a lot of them not grouped bodies, and trying to drag their tombstones with them to prove how good they was. Okay, so saying like they weren't actually very good, and the tombstones say, wow, look how great this person was. And so the idea is they'll be like dragging their tombstones like, look, I was great. That is a wild image. So someone trailing and dithering with their hands that doesn't and be from lying in the sea, that they can't even keep their grip with them. So their hands are slippery from lying in the sea. That's like, that seems to be saying that they're like buried in the sea. But why are we talking about the sea? Is it saying like they died at sea and then people made graves, but there's no body in them because they died at sea? Maybe that's what it is, and then they're gonna come out of the sea all slippery and try to grab the tombstones and be like, I was great. That's wild if that is what it means. Alright. I could see from the old fellow's satisfied air and the way in which he looked round for the approval of his cronies that he was showing off, so I put in a word to keep him going. Why are you keeping him going, Mina? Why do you want him to keep going? Oh, Mr. Swales, you can't be serious. Surely these tombstones are not all wrong. Yablins, maybe a poorish few not wrong, savin' where they make out the people too good. For there be folk that do think a bomb be like the sea, if only it be their own. Okay, so there might be a couple that aren't wrong, except there are, like, they might be mostly right, but make people seem too good in a couple places. And then For their folk that do think a bomble be like the sea, if only be their own. I have no idea what that means. And the whole thing be only lies. Now look you here. You come here, stranger, and you see this Kirkgarth. I nodded, for I thought it better to assent, though I did not quite understand his dialect. Exactly. I knew it had something to do with the church. He went on, and you consate that all these dins be a burn folk that be happed here, snod and snog. Snod and snog. So maybe it is correct. Maybe that is the point of why it's written that way, is because she doesn't understand his dialect, so she wrote it down that way. I don't know what a Kirkgarth is. That word might actually be a word. Well, I usually do look these things up, so maybe I'll try and look it up and see if I get any results. I'm infected. Kirkgarth? A churchyard. Okay, so that is a word. All right, cool, an understandable word. Okay, so he's like, you see this graveyard? Why couldn't we say graveyard? Even the word that's actually a word without any of the dialect in it is it's a word I didn't understand. I go from complimenting it to insulting it in one breath. Alright. So you come here a stranger and you see this graveyard. And you consate. Is that a dialect word or an actual word? You don't want to load, do you? Consate. To declare. Okay, so declare to be true. Assert positively. Confirm. Okay. So you confirm that all these stones be a boon folk that be happed here. Like people who happen to be here, people who lived here. Don't know what happed means, or snod and snog in this case. I assented again. Then that be just where the lie comes in. Why, there be scores of these lay beds that be tomb as old Dun's back-a-box on Friday night. Okay, there's lots of these beds that be tomb as old Dun's back-a-box Friday night. I don't know who old Dun is or what a back-a-box is. I do know what Friday night is, though. He nudged one of his companions and they all laughed. And my gog, how could they be otherwise? Look at that one. Be a test abaft the beer bank. Read it. I went over and read. Edward Spenslaw, master mariner, murdered by pirates off the coasts of Andres, April 1854. 8:80:30. When I came back, Mr. Swales went on. Who brought him home, I wonder, to hap him here, murdered off the coast of Andres, and you constated his body lay under. Why, I could name ye a dozen whose bones lie in the Greenland seas above. He pointed northwards, or where the currents may have drifted them. There be the sterns around ye. Ye can, with your young eyes, read the small print of the lies from here. Spraithwaite Lowry, I knew his father, lost in the Lively off Greenland in 20. Or Andrew Woodhouse, drowned in the same seas in 1777. Or John Paxton, drowned off Cape Farewell a year later. Or old John Rawlings, whose grandfather sailed with me, drowned in the Gulf of Finland in 50. Do you think that all these men will have to make a rush to Whitby when the trumpet sounds? I have me theorems aboot it. I tell you that when they got here, they'd be jawing and jostling one or another that way, that it'd be like a fight up on the ice on the old days, when we'd be at one another from daylight to dark, and trying to tie up our cuts by the light of the aurora borealis. This was evidently local pleasantry, for the old man cackled over it, and his cronies joined in with gusto. Okay, that paragraph was better. That one was much easier to understand. So I was right. So these people are people who are maybe murdered, maybe died for other reasons out at sea, and their bodies aren't there. But it's very weird that he's so mad that it's like, there's no bodies there, they died at sea. And it's like, do you expect us to go make a grave at sea? Like, it doesn't, I don't feel like it makes it a lie that they're, I mean, I don't know, like, yeah, there isn't a body there. And so I guess, like, maybe in the strictest sense saying, here lies this person, that's not true. But I don't think it's wrong to make graves for people who died at sea and not have a body in there, because it is, graves, like, in a lot of ways are for the living. This is something for the living to come to like talk to or leave flowers at or pray at or whatever you want to do. And so if, like, that's the family decided to do that, like, that's totally up to them, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But maybe that is the point. Maybe that's why he was introduced as dictatorial and wanting everyone to agree with him, because he just has weird opinions that most people wouldn't agree with. It also is funny to hear people refer to, like, oh yeah, he died in the 50s. And, like, it would be, so what, the 1850s to them? And for us, like, when we talk about the 50s, we mean the 1950s. And that's probably just something that's happened throughout history, throughout all the time that we had the names for years like this, which is wild to think about. I don't know, do you think that all these men will have to make a rush to Whitby when the trumpet sounds? I'd have to look, but I don't think it says in the Bible, you have to go to your grave. Like, it just says that will be resurrected. So I don't think that it's like, I gotta get to Whitby, or more like swimming. I gotta get to my grave or Jesus will leave me. I don't know what in theorems about it means. And that's the other thing. That's part of why the accent is so hard to figure out, because it's like murdered off the coast of Andres, totally normal. And then we've got Stins, like the Stones is spelled like this, and I'm pretty sure it is meant to be said as Stins. And then we have a boot, and a boot sounds like a very different accent than Stins. So and of course, like, I'm sure that there is an accent that sounds like that, but I just, like, can't pull it out of my brain. But I tell you that when they got here, they'd be John, John and Jocelyn would know that way that it'd be like fight up on the ice in the old days. We bat one another from daylight to dark, and trying to tie up our cuts by the light of the aurora borealis. So I guess he's saying that there's, like, an icy area where he lives, and they used to go fight there. That would be pretty wild to be like, fighting with my neighbor. Oh wow, let's bandage our cuts to the aurora borealis. And I don't know why, like, Jammin and Jocelyn seems to be saying, like, plus the fighting seems to be saying, like, they're gonna fight, and it's like, what? Why do they need to fight? Like, what is your point here, man? Like, are they trying to fight to get raptured? Or, I guess, I don't remember exactly how it works, but they fighting to get to Jesus or something? Why are they fighting? Why do they need their tombstones? What is your point? I also think it's funny that she uses the word cronies, because I think at least in today's world, that has a very negative connotation. Like, yeah, we got the villain and his henchmen, we got the villain and his cronies. Like, we got the bully and his cronies, rather than just, like, buddies. And so I don't know if that word did mean more like buddies, or if it is negative and she means it that way. But, I said, surely you are not quite correct, for you start on the assumption that all the poor people, or their spirits, will have to take their tombstones with them on the Day of Judgment. Do you think that will be really necessary? Yes, Mina! Yes! Exactly. Yes, I can see her next line. Yes, she's saying all the things I'm saying. Okay. Let me redo that, because I was reacting in the middle of it. But, I said, surely you are not quite correct, for you start on the assumption that all the poor people, or their spirits, will have to take their tombstones with them on the Day of Judgment. Do you think that would be really necessary? Well, what else be they tombstones for? Answer me that, miss. To please their relatives, I suppose. To please their relatives, you suppose. This, he said, with intense scorn. How will it pleasure their relatives to know that lies is wrote o'er them, and that everybody in the place knows that they be lies? He pointed to a stone at our feet, which had been laid down as a slab, on which the seat was rested, close to the edge of the cliff. Read the lies on that thruffstone, he said. The letters were upside down to me from where I sat, but Lucy was more opposite to them, so she leaned over and read. Sacred to the memory of George Cannon, who died in the hope of a glorious resurrection on July 29th, 1873, falling from the rocks at Kettleness. This tomb was erected by his sorrowing mother to her dearly beloved son. He was the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Really, Mr. Swales, I don't see anything very funny in that. She spoke her comment very gravely and somewhat severely. You don't see aught funny, but that's because you don't the sorrowing mother was a hellcat that hated him, because he was a crooked, a regular lamenter he was, and he hated her so that he committed suicide in order that she mightn't get an insurance she put on his life. She blew nigh the top of his head off with an old musket that they had for scaring the crows with. 'Twarn't for crows then, for he brought the clegs and the dopes to him. That's the way he fell off the rocks. And as to hopes of a glorious resurrection, I've often heard him say myself that he hoped he'd go to hell, for his mother was so pious that she'd be sure to go to heaven, and he didn't want to addle where she was. Now, isn't that stone at any rate? He hammered it with his stick as he spoke. A pack of lies? I won't make Gabriel keckle when Geordie comes panting up the greaves with his tombstone balanced on his hump and asked it to be took as evidence. I did not know what to say, but Lucy turned the conversation as she said, rising up. Oh, why did you tell us all this? It is my favorite seat, and I cannot leave it, and now I find I must go on sitting over at the grave of a suicide. That won't harm ye, my pretty, and it may make poor Geordie gladsome to have so trim a lass sitting on his lap. That won't hurt ye. Why, I've sat here off and on for nigh 20 years past, and it hasn't done me no harm. Don't ye fash about them as lies under ye, or that doesn't lie there either. It'll be time for ye to be getting scart when ye see the tombstones all run away with, and the place as bare as a stubble field. There's the clock, and I must gang. My service to you, ladies. And off he hobbled. Lucy and I sat a while, and it was all so beautiful before us that we took hands as we sat, and she told me all over again about Arthur and their coming marriage, but maybe just a little heartsick, for I haven't heard from Jonathan for a whole month. Okay. Yeah, so, well, wait, let's go back. So I think it does depend, and we're going to talk about the story he told, but I feel like if it's just a sense of, like, genuinely somebody loved their relative, and their relative died at sea, and then they write on the tombstone, like, here lies this person, like, I think that will comfort them. Like, if that's what they want to write, if that's what comforts them, that's what they'll write. So I don't think I think that they're both a little bit right. Because in the one hand, like, I do think there are genuine cases where it could please the relatives. But then there are also cases, like the one he mentions, where, yeah, okay, so it is just, like, his mom putting something on there that her son, that A, is not true, that she knows is not true, and also her son would not have wanted there. And so, yeah, you got a little more right to be a bit mad about that one. But I doubt that they're all that. I guess that is what he's saying, but I'm suspicious that all of them would be that bad. And I guess there's also a sense in which it's not what Geordie would have wanted on his tombstone, but it sure does please his mom to put it there. This is such a wild detail to include. Like, it very much, like, puts you in the world, and I can, like, the minute that she says that, I can imagine it so much more vividly. It feels so, like, just a little mundane detail that feels so realistic. It's just, I don't know, it's interesting, because on the one hand, I'm like, that doesn't feel necessary to say, but on the other hand, like I just said, it makes it more vivid and realistic, so interesting little thing. Do my voices for Mina and Lucy sound different enough? There's enough of a gap between the readings that I kind of forget the voices I gave them, but I do Mina's like a little higher than mine, and then I do Lucy's more significantly higher than mine. But I don't know if they don't sound that different. And it's weird. Okay, wait. So he says that, like, he committed suicide. And then, oh no, I think I read this as she, but it's he. Okay, so it was him. Okay. I don't know what clegs and dops are. This is pretty wild. I do like the hammering it with his stick. Can totally imagine that too. And this is like, as much as I don't think any of what he's saying is true, as someone who is a Christian and does believe in the stuff that the Bible says, I don't think that what he's saying is true in many different ways. But if this ain't a hilarious image, like, I love the idea of this illustrious, glorious angel, like, sitting there, and then Geordie's like, look, I was a great guy, you know? And then it's funny how, where did they talk about it? That, like, it was laid down. Oh, I guess that it's one of those that's like a horizontal one. Because back when I read this the first time, and then again when I read it just now, I thought, like, it's broken. It broke off and fell on the ground, which could be true. But I think it's just saying, like, it's laid down as a slab. So it's just kind of one of those horizontal or, like, a little bit diagonal ones that you could sit on. And then it's funny that like, that Lucy is like, instead of, oh wow, like that's horrible, or like, you're right, it is a pack of lies. Instead she's like, aw, my favorite seat's ruined. And it's like, that's what you took out of that, Lucy. You okay. Like, yeah, I'm more concerned that you have a favorite tombstone to sit on than anything else. And it is true. Like, it won't harm you sitting on the grave of a suicide. And that this is creepy and probably makes her want to sit on it less. I love the idea of, like, him sitting on it and just, like, rubbing his butt on it a little bit. He's, like, doing something to just, you know, uh, desecrate's too strong a word, but, just, like, insult him in death a little bit. And it's also just like, yeah, like, it's okay. You can totally sit on the tombstone of that, like, dead little jerk. All right, gotta go. He's just, no transition. Gotta go. But I guess it is that way with people like that. They're just talking, not letting anybody else talk, not letting anybody else have an opinion. Okay, time to go. And then it's funny that it goes from, like, talking about the tombstones and the Day of Judgment, and then, all right, gotta go, and then, oh, wow, it's so beautiful, we must hold hands. And, again, like, maybe this is one of those things that was more normal at the time, but I don't feel like, I don't know, like, I was gonna say, I don't feel like I've had that feeling before, but I guess maybe I have, like, maybe, like, yeah, okay, like, you look at a really pretty sunset and you're like, you reach over and grab the hand of the person next to you and you're like, yeah. So maybe it is, but it's especially weird that it's just a graveyard that they visit all the time, and they just heard an old man spout off about how the tombstones are lies. An old man ruined Lucy's favorite seat, and they're like, so beautiful, hold hands. All right. The same day, I came up here alone, for I am very sad. There was no letter for me. I hope there cannot be anything the matter with Jonathan. The clock has just struck 9. I see the lights scattered all over town, sometimes in rows where the streets are, and sometimes singly. They run right up the Esk and die away in the curve of the valley. To my left, the view is cut off by a black line of roof of the old house next to the abbey. The sheep and lambs are bleating in the fields away behind me, and there's a clatter of a donkey's hoofs up the paved road below. The band on the pier is playing a harsh waltz in good time, and further along the quay there's a Salvation Army meeting in the back street. Neither of the bands hears the other, but up here why am I tripping so much? But up here I hear and see them both. I wonder where Jonathan is, and if he's thinking of me. I wish he were here. This would be so, I don't know if, like, other adaptations might have done it, but I love the idea of, like, just Mina sitting in the graveyard peacefully, and he's like, oh, wonder what Jonathan's up to, and if he's thinking about me. And it cuts to Jonathan running through the halls away from vampire ladies. Being like, oh, Mina, like, I want to get back to you. Or, oh, Mina, I'm sorry, I thought they were hot. Oh, boy. I guess this is August, and he does leave in June, so I guess he's still recovering right now. So I guess that wouldn't quite work, but it's still a funny image. Also, I don't know exactly what harsh waltz in good time means, because I'd think harsh would mean, like, they're playing it wrong, they're playing it too loud, they're playing it the wrong time, or something like that. It's harsh, but it's in good time. Also funny to see stuff like the Salvation Army and, like, remember that was actually around back then, or learn that was around back then. Alright. August 2nd. Log of the Demeter. 2nd August, midnight. Woke up from a few minutes' sleep by hearing a cry, seemingly outside my port. Could see nothing in the fog. Rushed on deck and ran against mate. Tells me heard cry and ran, but no sign of man on watch. One more gone. Lord help us. Mate says we must be past Straits of Dover, as in a moment of fog lifting he saw North Foreland, just as he heard the man cry out. If so, we are now off in the North Sea. Only God can guide us in the fog. It seems to move with us, and God seems to have deserted us. Sorry, that accent was terrible. I like started doing one and then I was like, this sounds bad. And then I didn't know what to do going forward, and so I think it sounded worse. Oh boy. But this is a metal line. Like, only God can guide us through the fog, and God's deserted us. Like, woof. And then again, like, think just keeping in mind that the sails are just constantly up. They're just going forward, and they don't know where they're going, and they can't stop. Adds an extra layer of horror to this that I didn't really think of when I read this before. And then, yeah, waking up to a cry and then seeing nothing in the fog would be very scary. Oh, and so, yeah, like, just, they put a guy on watch, and he got. Alright. August 3rd. Log of the Demeter. 3rd August. At midnight, I went to relieve the man at the wheel, and when I got to it, I found no one there. The wind was steady. As we ran before it, there was no yawing. I dared not leave it, so shouted for the mate. After a few seconds, he rushed up on deck in his flannels. He looked wild-eyed and haggard, and I greatly feared his reason has given way. He came close to me and whispered hoarsely, with his mouth to my ear, as though fearing the very air might hear. "It is here. I know it now. On the watch last night I saw it, like a man, tall and thin and ghastly pale. It was in the bows and looking out. I crept behind it and gave it my knife, but the knife went through it, empty as the air." As he spoke, he took his knife and drove it savagely into space. And he went on, "But it is here, and I'll find it. It is in the hold, perhaps in one of those boxes. I'll unscrew them one by one and see. You work the helm." With a warning look and his finger on his lip, he went below. There was springing up a choppy wind. I could not leave the helm. I saw him come out on deck again with a tool chest and a lantern, and go down the forward hatchway. He is mad, stark, raving mad. It's no use my trying to stop him. You can't hurt those big boxes. They are invoiced as clay, and to pull them about is as harmless as the thing as he can do. So here I stay, and mind the helm, and write these notes. I can only trust in God and wait till the fog clears. Then, if I can't steer to any harbor with the wind, that is, I shall cut down sails and lie by and signal for help. So I get why he thinks he's mad, especially if how I read it is correct. But at the same time, your men have been picked off one by one, and you don't know by what. So when someone's like, "Hey, I think I know what's picking them off one by one. It's here, hiding out in the boxes." Pretty credible, actually. Like, it might have sounded crazy a couple weeks ago. Not so crazy right now. You should maybe give him some credence. Give him some belief. I guess flannels was like PJs at that time. And it's also funny, it's like, I greatly fear his reason has given away, and then there's no judgment during the whole thing, and then it's like, he is stark raving mad. I do really like this image, fearing the very air might hear. And that sort of thing always makes me think of the Chronicles of Narnia, and like, even the trees are on her side kind of thing. Like, that's such a spooky image that has always stuck with me, because it's cool and spooky. And then I love the image of him just putting the finger to his lip. That's a great way to describe that. And I do like, I do feel like the captain not believing in any capacity with what the maid is saying is the most dumb thing he's done so far. But at the same time, I do like that he's like, he can't hurt the boxes. I'm not going to try to stop him. We can barely steer. I'm going to just stay here. That is completely valid. It is nearly all over now. Just as I was beginning to hope that the mate would come out calmer, I heard him knocking away at something in the hold. Probably the boxes, man. And work is good for him. I love the idea of him just hacking madly at the boxes, and the captain's like, little work will do him some good. There came up the hatchway a sudden startled scream, which made my blood run cold. And up on the deck he came as if shot from a gun, a raging madman with his eyes rolling and his face convulsing with fear. "Save me! Save me!" he cried, and then looked round on the blanket of fog. His horror turned to despair, and in a steady voice he said, "You had better come to, Captain, before it is too late. He is there. I know the secret now. The sea will save me from him, and it is all that is left." Before I could say a word or move forward to seize him, he sprang on the bulwark and deliberately threw himself into the sea. I suppose I know the secret too now. It was this madman who had got rid of the men one by one. Now he's followed them himself. God help me. How am I to account for all these horrors when I get to port? When I get to port? Will that ever be? Okay, that makes a bit more sense, that he's like, I haven't known what's been picking my men off, and then he's like, it was you! It was you and your craziness, and not, recognizing that maybe the craziness ain't so crazy. I really love that, as if shot from a gun. That is a fantastic image. Oh, okay. There's an ad going on.
I can show you the kitty. I can show you the cat. Oh no, are you gonna hack again?
There's another cat over there, yeah, but you can't even see me pointing, so you definitely can't see her. Oh no, baby. Oh, sweetie. I'll turn the camera away from him, give him some dignity. Baby. There, maybe I'll mute myself while he's hacking. You done now, baby.
You done now, baby. Kitty.
Alright. Oh yeah, I do love the, wow, I know the secret too now.
It was you, you madman! You took them all out!
And it is interesting to see how people would be like, oh, we can only turn to God for help, and God's abandoned us. And then in the next bit to be like, I'm praying to God, God help me. They don't have anywhere else to turn. They think he's abandoned them, but also turn to him. I totally relate to that. So I relate to that, but it's just interesting to see that it's like, you said he abandoned you, but you're also acting like he didn't abandon you and will help you. Alright. Mina Murray's journal, 3rd of August. Another week gone, and no news from Jonathan. Not even to Mr. Hawkins, from whom I have heard. Oh, I do hope he's not ill. He surely would have written. I look at that last letter of his, but somehow it does not satisfy me. does not read like him, and yet it is his writing. There's no mistake of that. Lucy has not walked much in her sleep the last week. There's an odd concentration about her, which I do not understand. Even in her sleep, she seems to be watching me. She tries the door and finds it locked, goes about the room searching for the key. That is so creepy. You're like, I have good news. She hasn't been sleepwalking. She just watches me in her sleep. It's like, that's way more terrifying than sleepwalking. I would take the sleepwalking over that any day. Once again, this would be a hilarious moment for a cut. I do hope he is not ill. And then he's just like banging on doors, trying locked doors, fearing for his life, considering his pants folded the wrong way. Alright. And then it shows how well Mina knows him that she recognizes that it doesn't sound like him. So good on Mina. Alright. August 4th. Log of the Demeter. 4th August. Still fog, which the sunrise cannot pierce. I know there's sunrise, because I am a sailor. Why else, I know not. I dared not go below. I dared not leave the helm. So here all night I stayed. In the dimness of the night I saw it. Him. God forgive me. But the mate was right to jump overboard. It was better to die like a man, to die like a sailor in blue water. No man can object. But I am captain, and I must not leave my ship. But I shall baffle this fiend or monster, and I shall tie my hands to the wheel when my strength begins to fail, and along with them I shall tie that which it dare not touch. And then come good wind or foul, I shall save my soul and my honor as a captain. I'm growing weaker, and the night is coming on. If he can look me in the face again, I may not have time to act. If we are wrecked, mayhap this bottle may be found, and those who find it may understand. If not, well, then all men shall know that I have been true to my trust. God and the Blessed Virgin and the saints help a poor ignorant soul trying to do his duty. All right, this was a more juicy one. So it's interesting when you read it in order versus out of order. So this is, I think I talked about this before, that I started reading through Dracula daily, and then I started reading from the actual book. And so I think that the first time I read the Log of the Demeter was in the actual book, because I very distinctly remember that I got the newspaper clipping first, that I got the... the point is that in the newspaper clipping, it's like, we found a ship. There was only one person on it. He was a skeleton. He was tied to the wheel, and he had a cross in his hand. Or I can't remember. Maybe he was like tied in a cross formation, or both. I'm not sure. But you're like, well, that's spooky. What's this about? And so when you hear that first and then you get to this, then you're like, oh, here's how it happened. And then in this case, then you wouldn't know that that's what happened first, and you just be like, oh, okay, that's kind of intense. You gotta tie yourself to the wheel, all right. I don't really know exactly what tying himself to the wheel accomplishes. Because, like, tying himself to the cross, yeah, that accomplishes stuff. that accomplishes something. But, like, if you're tied to the wheel, I mean, I guess, I was going to say you can't control the ship, but I guess maybe you can. Maybe that is the point, that it's like, no, you can't rip me off the wheel. I'm going to be in control of the ship to my last breath, I guess. Or it could just be, I'm going to make it harder for you to kill me, or like confirming he's not going to go into the sea. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why he wants, why the plan is to tie himself to the wheel. This is also something that, if I remember correctly, that I disliked about the Last Voyage of the Demeter movie. Because if I remember correctly, he didn't do this in the movie. And it was like that's one of the most, like, interesting and, like, striking parts is that image. And you're not gonna use it? Like, oh, that bugged me. It also prevents the monster from taking the wheel since he is wholly unholding the steering. Good point. Okay, so yeah, that's probably the reason that it's less about, like, I have control and more about you don't have control. You can't take us where you might want to take us. Unfortunately, I think where they're going is exactly where he wants to go, and that's why he picked the ship. But the captain doesn't know that. I really like how he goes, I saw it, him. So he's, like, correcting himself and going, no, it's not an it, it's a him. And then the second time he says he, and he's like, no, he doesn't sound right, it's an it. That shows, like, the scariness of it, the confusion of it. That's a really cool little device. And capitalizing the it and him also adds to the, like, oh, this is a big deal. This is real spooky. This is such a great, like, well, I was going to say introduction to Dracula, but I guess, like, we have met Dracula, but this is more introduction to his monstrous side, because they don't say, like, oh, yes, like, we had a stowaway. He was a nice gentleman who you know, spoke about England very properly. they were just like, we all dying, and we don't know why. Which does make, like, as I'm thinking about it, and, like, this was one of the other things that kind of annoyed me about the Log of the Demeter movie, that Dracula is super monstrous in that. Like, he's not human at all. And it especially annoyed me at the end that he looks like a monster when he's just, like, walking into a bar, and it's like, he's a distinguished gentleman. He's not just a monster. But it does make a little more sense rereading it, that it's like, oh yeah, like, you really are just saying the monster part of him, like, or they are. That's not to say that he isn't a distinguished gentleman too, but that is the part of him that the Demeter sees. Let's see. It is weird that he says, it was better to die like a man, to die like a sailor in blue water, no man can object. It's like, okay, I'm not a sailor, I don't really know the sailor rules, but that doesn't feel like dying like a man. I don't feel like, save me, and then jumping into the sea is dying like a man. I feel like trying to bash the monster's head in. I feel... Now, as I say that, I'm thinking about how Jonathan tried to bash his head in with a shovel. I'm pretty sure I ragged on Jonathan for doing that. But now it's like, okay, if Jonathan died trying to bash Dracula's head in with a shovel, he would have died like a man. He would have died as more of a man than the first mate here. I guess the thing with Jonathan is that, because, like, here in the Demeter, if they had a shovel and they were trying to bash his head in with a shovel, I would have been like, yes, dying like a man. And I think the reason that I was teasing about Jonathan doing it is because he has the choice of, like, I snuck down here. I'm not supposed to be here. Should I, A, go back to my room? B, try to mash this immortal monster's head in with a shovel? Questions. Think I'm going B. You know, then it's like, get out of there, buddy. And I think he says that he's like, I think he says something about him being immortal or difficult to kill. And so I could be wrong, but especially if that is true, then that would also be why I would say that it's like, you know, a shovel ain't gonna work. And so go back to your room. Oh, but it is funny how that is. But anyway, so yeah, like the captain goes down with the ship. I'm guessing that's what it's referring to. I don't know if that's a more modern idea. But that seems like what's going on here. That's like, I'd like to die like a man and throw myself into the sea, but I must be a captain. It's like, this feels like very much dying like a man, like tying yourself to the steering wheel with a cross and going out like that. Like, yeah, that's metal. That's dying like a man. Uh, and I guess, I don't know if I mentioned this above, but there is a sense in which, okay, yes, like, I do think, as we established with the tombstones part, that, yeah, sailors do die at sea, and they do die in the water. That is how sailors die. I just think that most of them don't jump. I think my point is, like, save me, woo! Seems more cowardly than trying to fight. And I guess as I'm talking about it, I guess he did try to shank him with his knife and it did nothing. And so I guess that's part of the point. And also, all this saying, I would probably do the same thing. I would probably be jumping into the water. It is just, I'm just talking about how weird it is that it's like, he died like a man. when the image is, save me! Jump into the water. Alright. Oh yeah, it's so he's putting a message in a bottle. That is interesting. And then it is like, I don't know how I feel about the fact that in the end he's like, oh, he's just a poor soul trying to do his duty. And it's like, first thought, well, you don't really have to do your duty at this point because you're kind of the only person left. Like, you can abandon your duty and focus solely on surviving. But I still think he is trying to do that, kind of. But there's also an element which is like, that's very noble. That he's like, yep, going down with my ship, trying to make sure the monster doesn't control it, doing my duty. Alright. Let's go on. August 6th. Mina Murray's journal. 6th of August. Another 3 days, and no news. The suspense is getting dreadful. If I only knew where to write to or where to go to, I should feel easier. But no one has heard a word of Jonathan since the last letter. I must only pray to God for patience. Lucy is more excitable than ever, but is otherwise well. Last night was very threatening. Excuse me. And the fishermen say that we are in for, a storm. Last night was very threatening, and the fishermen say that we are in for a storm. I must try and watch it and learn the weather signs. Today is a grey day, and the sun, as I write, is hidden in thick clouds, high over Kettleness. Everything is grey, except the green grass, which seems like emerald amongst it. Grey, earthy rock, grey clouds, tinged with the sunburst at the far edge, hang over the grey sea, into which the sand points stretch like grey fingers. The sea is tumbling in over the shallows of the sandy flats with a roar, muffled in the sea mist drifting inland. The horizon is lost in a grey mist. All is vastness. The clouds are piled up like giant rocks, and there is a brool over the sea that sounds like some presage of doom. Dark figures are on the beach here and there, sometimes half shrouded in the mist, and seem men like trees walking. The fish boats are racing for home and rise and dip in the ground, swell as they sweep into the harbour, bending to the scuppers. Here comes old Mr. Swales. He's making straight for me, and I can see by the way he lifts his hat that he wants to talk. Being quite touched by the change in the poor old man, he sat down beside me, he said in a very gentle way, I want to say something to you, miss. I could see he was not at ease, so I took his poor old wrinkled hand in mine and asked him to speak fully. So he said, leaving his hand in mine, I'm afraid, my dearie, that I must have shocked you by all the wicked things I've been saying about the dead and such like for weeks past, but I didn't mean them, and I want you to remember that when I'm gone. We old folks that be daffled, and with one foot abaft the crook-coal, don't altogether like to think of it. We don't want to feel scared of it, and that's why I've took to making light of it, so that I'd cheer up my own heart a bit. But Lord love you, miss, I ain't afraid of dying. Not a bit. Only I don't want to die, if I can help it. My time must be nigh at hand now, for I be old, and 100 years is too much for any man to expect. I'm so nigh it that the old man is already whetting his scythe. You see, I can't get out of the habit of caffing about it all. At once. The chaps will wag they be used to. Someday soon the angel of death will sound his trumpet for me. But don't you duel and greet, my dearie. For he saw that I was crying. For he saw that I was crying. If he should come this very night, I'd not refuse to answer his call. For life be, after all, only a waiting for something else than what we're doing, and death be all that we can rightly depend on. But I'm content, for it's coming to me, my dearie, and coming quick. Maybe coming while we be looking and wondering. Maybe it's in that wind out over the sea that's bringing with it loss and wreck, and sore distress and sad hearts. Look, look, he cried suddenly. Something in that wind and in the host beyond that sounds and looks and tastes and smells like death. It's in the air. I feel it coming. Lord, make me answer cheerful when my call comes. He held up his arms devoutly and raised his hat. His mouth moved as though he were praying. After a few minutes' silence, he got up, shook hands with me, and blessed me. After a few minutes' silence, he got up, shook hands with me, and blessed me, and said goodbye, and hobbled off. It all touched me, and upset me very much. I was glad when the Coast Guard came along with his spyglass under his arm. He stopped to talk with me, as he always does, but all the time he kept looking at the strange ship. I can't make her out, he said. She's a Russian, by the look of her, but she's knocking about in the queerest way. She doesn't know her mind a bit. She seems to see the storm coming, but can't decide whether to run up north in the open or to put it in here. Look there again. She's steered mighty strangely. She doesn't mind the hand on the wheel. Changes about with every puff of the wind. Hear more of her before this time tomorrow. So that does imply that they're seeing the Demeter out on the... Yeah, okay, so that is the next chapter. Out there. So I guess that's... Oh, so that's the last one. Okay, so... And that is interesting, not knowing if this is going to be the last one. But if you read the clipping first, then presumably you do know. Okay, when he ties his hands, that's the last entry. But yes, let's see. I do kind of like her image about like everything's gray except the green grass. I don't know, that men like trees walking seems familiar. Let me just look it up. Oh, can I just do it from here? What? Okay, that's not the answer I expected, so let's go a little more detailed. Oh, okay. I get it now. So it's from the Bible, Mark 8:24. The man looked up and said, I see men, but they look like trees that are walking. And he beheld and said, I see men as trees walking. Okay, so those are the different translations. Okay, so, where'd it go? Okay, so yeah, she's just referencing that. She's just saying that they're all shrouded and stuff. I don't know if this has some significance or not, but it seems very spooky. It is weird that it's like, here comes old Mr. Swales, and then immediately goes into it, as opposed to saying, here comes Mr. Swales, I'll type this up later, and then later, here's what Mr. Swales said, you know? And then, again, like, it's hard to tell, but this reads like, here we go, he wants to talk. And then, he's had a change. It is nice that he's like, oh, I thought that I scared you, so here's why I talk the way I do. And then it's kind of funny that it's like, poor old wrinkled hand. Oh, I'm not highlighted. Or not in the right place. Poor old wrinkled hand feel like you could leave off at least one of those adjectives. Like, adding poor old wrinkled starts to feel like you're adding insult to injury here. I feel like you did mean them, though. I feel like you meant them. You're just like, it's valid to apologize for upsetting her, but also still mean what you said. It's also fair to be like, I don't want you to remember the bad stuff when I'm gone. And also fair that he's like, I don't want to be scared of death, so I make light of it. Like, it's a particular version of making light of it, but yeah, like, saying, it's all lies, all weird stuff, and having no reverence for it is making light of it in a way. Not super funny, but it is making light of it. And it's like, I can't tell if because part of me thinks he is scared of dying, he's just trying to convince himself. At the same time, it's like, maybe he's not, maybe he's telling the truth. I think I'm gonna put the desk down. And I love the, I don't want to die if I can help it. It's like relatable. I don't want to die if I can help it, but I don't. I'm close. And then 100 years, too much for any man to expect. Such a true and sad line. And I do like the line of the old man is already whetting his scythe. A lot of this is quite good, more understandable. Of course, but then we immediately hit this, and I don't know what that means. And I don't feel like, I mean, I'll have to look to be sure, but I don't think that it says that the angel of death has a trumpet, so he's really likes to make particular, I don't know, has particular thoughts about these Bible stories, like a lot of people do. And then it's like, It is funny how it's just like, she just starts crying, and like then that goes the other direction of like, oh, he wants to talk, like, here we go again. But then the fact that he just says like, I'm about to die, and then she starts sobbing, that makes it seem like she actually does care about him, because like, this does not read, what he said doesn't read as something that is a tearjerker. I do like this image. Our life, after all, only be waiting for something else than what we're doing. That is like that is quite deep, actually. Like, we're always like, it does feel like a lot of the time, whatever you're doing, you're always waiting to be doing something else. And then it's like, you're always waiting to do something else, but death is the only thing you can depend on. The only something else that is inevitable. And then, it is doing that. That's true. And also fair. I do feel like this is another missed opportunity from the Last Voyage of the Demeter movie, that they didn't, like, as far as I remember, they didn't show like Mina or him like on the shore watching, like either show their conversation or show them watching. I feel like that would have been a cool little nugget. Of them being like, what's that on the shore? And then, she does change with the wind. It is getting to be my bedtime, but I do want to at least get to the actual cutting where it talks about him tying himself to the wheel. I feel like that would, that goes with what I was talking about earlier, so I do want to get to that. And I think it's either this one or the next one. August 8th. Cutting from the Daily Graph, 8th of August. Pasted in Mina Murray's journal. From a correspondent. Whitby. One of the greatest and suddenest storms on record has just been experienced here, with results both strange and unique. The weather had been somewhat sultry, but not to any degree uncommon in the month of August. Saturday evening was as fine as was ever known, and the great body of holiday-makers laid out yesterday for visits to Mulgrave Woods, Robinswood Bay, Rigmill, Runswick, Staithes, and the various trips to the neighbourhood of Whitby. The steamers Emma and Scarborough made trips up and down the coast. There was an unusual amount of tripping both to and from Whitby. The day was usually fine till the afternoon, when some of the gossips who frequent the East Cliff churchyard, and from that commanding eminence watch the wide sweep of sea visible to the north and east, called attention to a sudden show of mares' tails high in the sky to the northwest. The wind was then blowing from the southwest in the mild degree, which in barometrical language is ranked number 2, light breeze. Is that something we still have today? I mean, I know we have barometers and stuff, but do we go number 2, light breeze? And then I think these are cirrus clouds. I think that's the term. It feels like so far there's a lot of details that if I were critiquing this, I would say to cut. Like, I feel like a lot of this is not necessary to understand. Yo, a ship just showed up, and there was a skeleton who was tied to the mast with a cross, tied to the steering wheel with a is that the right word? But tied to the wheel with a cross. Like, feels like you can get to that point. It feels like we don't need to be mentioning barometrical language marked number 2, light breeze. The Coast Guard on duty at once made report, and one old fisherman who, for more than half a century, has kept watch on weather signs from the East Cliff, foretold in an emphatic manner the coming of a sudden storm. The approach of sunset was so very beautiful, so grand in its masses of splendidly coloured clouds, that there was quite an assemblage on the walk along the cliff in the old churchyard to enjoy the beauty. Before the sun dipped below the black mass of Kettle Ness, standing boldly athwart the western sky, its downward way was marked by myriad clouds of every sunset colour, flame, purple, pink, green, violet, and all the tints of gold, with here and there masses, not large, but of seemingly absolute blackness, in all sorts of shapes, as well outlined as colossal silhouettes. First of all, my favorite color, flame. Granted, yes, flames do have very distinct coloring, but it's just weird to say, yeah, what are your favorite colors? Yeah, blue, green, flame. I'm sorry, what? And then, second thing, I don't think there should be blackness in the sky. I feel like this should be described with more concern. Like, oh yeah, just like some absolute black masses in the clouds. It's like, what now? What's in the clouds? The experience was not lost on the painters, and doubtless some of the sketches of the Prelude to the Great Storm will grace the R.A. and R.I. walls in May next. More than one captain made up his mind, then and there, that his cobble, or his mule, as they term the different classes of boats, would remain in the harbour till the storm had passed. The wind fell away entirely during the evening, and at midnight there was a dead calm, a sultry heat, and that prevailing intensity which on the approach of thunder affects persons of a sensitive nature. There were but few lights in the sight. There were but few lights in sight at sea, for even the coasting steamers, which usually hug the shore so closely, kept well to seaward, and but few fishing boats were in sight. The only sail noticeable was a foreign schooner, with all sails set, which was seemingly going westwards. The foolhardiness of ignorance of her officers was a prolific theme for comment, while she remained in sight, and efforts were made to signal her to reduce sail in face of her danger. Before the night shut down, she was seen with sails idly flapping as she gently rolled on the undulating swell of the sea, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Okay, what is that from? That also sounds familiar. Oh, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Okay. Gotcha. Shortly before... I need to put it back. Shortly before 10 o'clock, the stillness of the air grew quite oppressive, and the silence was so marked that the bleating of a sheep inland or the barking of a dog in the town was distinctly heard, and the band on the pier, with its lively French air, was like a discord in the great harmony of nature's silence. A little after midnight came a strange sound from over the sea, and high overhead the air began to carry a strange, faint, hollow booming. Then, without warning, the tempest broke, with a rapidity which at the time seemed incredible, and even afterwards as impossible to realize. The whole aspect of nature at once became convulsed. The waves rose in growing fury, each overtopping its fellow, till in a very few minutes the lately glassy sea was like a roaring and devouring monster. I do like that image. That's a pretty image. White-crested waves beat madly on the level sands and rushed up the shelving cliffs. Others broke over the piers and with their spume... I haven't seen that word before, spume. And with their spume swept the lanthorns of the lighthouses, which rise from the end of either pier of Whitby Harbour. The wind roared like thunder, and blew with such force that it was with difficulty that even strong men kept their feet, or clung with grim clasp to the iron stanchions. It was found necessary to clear the entire piers and the mass of onlookers, or else the fatalities of the night would have been increased manifold. To add to the difficulties and dangers of the time, masses of sea fog came drifting inland, white, wet clouds which swept by in ghostly fashion, so dank and damp and cold that it needed but little effort of imagination to think that the spirits of those lost at sea were touching their living brethren with the clammy hands of death, and many a one shuddered as the wreaths of sea mist swept by. At times the mist cleared, and the sea, for some distance, could be seen in the glare of the lightning, which now came thick and fast, followed by such sudden peals of thunder that the whole sky overhead seemed trembling under the shock of the footsteps of the storm. Spume, frothy matter on liquids, foam, scum. Gotcha. Yeah, that does make sense. I was thinking it was like, spray of some sort. That does make sense. Thank you. Oh boy, this is pretty long. How long is the second clipping? Okay, much less long. Oh boy. So, granted, I am tired and that's affecting things too. But, far be it for me to critique a classic. But at the same time, I am getting bored with, all this description of just, all of this is just setup. And it's not really necessary setup. You really can just be headline... Ship found on the coast that had a skeleton tied to the wheel with a cross in his hands. You can get straight to it. You don't need to talk about the clouds or the sunset or anything like that. And, there's some intrigue in, oh, wow, this storm is, really bad. It's, particularly, bad. More than usual kind of thing. But... yeah, it just feels like we've already gone for, this whole thing is a giant paragraph. It is ultimately not that important. It would be so funny if there's a teacher that has their students read this book and then they quiz them on the information. What were the clouds like? What did what was the wind ranked in barometrical language? And stuff like that. And we have the ship. The ship is there, but then we go back to talking about the tempest and stuff. I did like this line. I do like spume. I think that's a great word for it. That's a perfect onomatopoeia. What is a stanchion? Can you look that up for me? Do you like the ghostly fashion? I do really like especially the clammy hands of death. I do really like that image. That's a great image. Also, were newspaper articles like this back then? Because I feel like this is much more like, the Daily Graph. This is more like an actual like writing piece than it is like I said, like it's there's a ship that was found on the coast like at 11 o'clock last night. This ship was found on the coast and this is what happened. Like I feel like that's kind of how newspaper articles go, not like as an idle ship painted on an ocean. The painters didn't. There's like a line about like the painters didn't waste time. They totally painted it. The clouds, they were so pretty. I feel like nowadays newspapers aren't really like that. Some of the scenes thus revealed were of immeasurable grandeur and of absorbing interest. The sea running mountains high through skywards, with each wave mighty masses of white foam, which the tempest seemed to snatch at and whirl away into space. Here and there a fishing boat with a rag of sail, running madly for shelter before the blast. Now and again the white wings of a storm-tossed seabird. There are some good images there. I will say that. I do like the snatch at and whirl away into space. I can very much imagine that, and like the rag of a sail. I do like that. On the summit of the east cliff, the new searchlight was ready for experiment, but had not yet been tried. The officers in charge of it got it into working order, and in the pauses of the inrushing mist, swept with it the surface of the sea. Once or twice its service was most effective, as when a fishing boat with gunwale under water rushed into the harbour, able by the guidance of the sheltering light to avoid the danger of dashing against the piers. As each boat achieved the safety of the port, there was a shout of joy from the mass of people on shore. A shout which for a moment seemed to cleave the gale and was then swept away in its rush. Do you like that image, cleave the gale? Before long, the searchlight discovered some distance away a schooner with all sails set, apparently the same vessel which had been noticed earlier in the evening. The wind had by this time backed to the east. There was a shudder amongst the watchers on the cliff as they realized the terrible danger in which she now was. Between her and the port lay a great flat reef on which so many good ships have from time to time suffered, and with the wind blowing from its present quarter, it would be quite impossible that she should fetch the entrance of the harbour. It was now nearly the hour of high tide, but the waves were so great that in their troughs and shallows of the shore were most visible, and the schooner, with all sails set, was rushing with such speed that, in the words of one old salt, she must fetch up somewhere, if it was only in hell. And then came another rush of sea fog, greater than any hitherto, a mass of dank mist, which seemed to close in on all things like a grey pall, and left available to men only the organ of hearing, for the roar of the tempest, and the crash of the thunder, and the booming of the mighty billows came through the damp oblivion even louder than before. The rays of the searchlight were kept fixed on the harbour mouth across the east pier, where the shock was expected, and men waited breathless. The wind suddenly shifted to the northeast, and the remnant of the sea fog melted in the blast. And then, mirabile dictu, between the piers, leaping from wave to wave as it rushed at headlong speed, swept the strange schooner before the blast, with all sails set, and gained the safety of the harbour. The searchlight followed her, and a shudder ran through all who saw her, for lashed to the helm was a corpse, with a drooping head, which swung horribly to and fro at each motion of the ship. No other form could be seen on deck at all. A great awe came on all as they realized that the ship, as if by a miracle, had found the harbour, unsteered, save by the hand of a dead man. However, all took place more quickly than it takes to write these words. The schooner paused not, but rushing across the harbor pitched herself on that accumulation of sand and gravel washed by many tides and many storms into the southeast corner of the pier, jutting under the east cliff, known locally as Tate Hill Pier. We finally... Let's see, okay, where was it? We finally got to it. Okay, so after what? Pretty much 3 pages it took to get to the point of the article. So I'm remembering, I do think that this was hard for me to get through when I first read it as well, that I was getting bored, and I realized I was very likely even more bored the first time I read it, because if you read the book, just read this just in the book, then you don't know what's coming. You don't know that there's actually something exciting going to happen. And so it just seems like, wow, gee, there was a wild storm last night, and it's like, do I care? You know, I really feel like you could pretty much start, you know, there was a ship, she came in, you know, we were, let's see, they were like, oh, you know, we were like, hey, you're in danger, you're gonna hit the reef. And then, like, she found the harbor, and, actually, nobody's manning that ship, you know. I feel like that's great. just start there. Because, like, I don't really have much to say about, like, I've just been reading through it, and I don't have much to say about it, which is even more a sign of, like, yep, wacky storm happening. But all that said, I do really like that image. Like, it is, the image is kind of good enough to forgive a multitude of sins. I'm surprised I haven't seen more art of that. But yeah, like, just the idea of, like, a ship comes into harbor and you're like, then, like, it's full, the sails are down, it's going in, it's like, hey, you're gonna hit the reef. And then it goes in and you're like, hey, dude, what the... Oh. And then you look, and the only man on it is a corpse tied to the mast. Like, that is wonderfully dramatic and spooky. I do really love that image. And it is wild that it, like, I don't know, found the harbor. There was, of course, a considerable concussion as the vessel drove up on the sand heap. Excuse me. Every spar, rope, and stay was strained, and some of the top hammer came crashing down. But strangest of all, in the very instant the shore was touched, an immense dog sprang up on deck from below, as if shot up by the concussion, and running forward it jumped from the bow on the sand, making straight for the steep cliff where the churchyard hangs over the laneway to the east pier, so steeply that some of the flat tombstones, thruststones, or throughstones, as they call them in Whitby vernacular, actually project over where the sustaining cliff has fallen away, disappeared in the darkness, which seemed intensified just beyond the focus of the searchlight. I am curious what people who hadn't read this book, when this book was not part of the common, knowledge, what people thought when they're like, there was a dog that jumped on shore, if they were like, Captain didn't mention a dog, if they would recognize, that's Drac. I do really like that image. Like, it just, this book just does such an amazing job of making Dracula, like making him scary, making him intimidating, making him suave and gentlemanly. But yeah, like, just having it be like, oh my gosh, there's this terrifying monster, and we barely see him, like, he's barely described, he's just, like, ghostly pale, and then, like, you're like, huh, where's the monster? What's he gonna do? How's he gonna get off? Is he dead? Is he gonna kill the captain? How'd he kill the captain? And then you just see a dog jump off, and it's like, he can turn into a dog now? Wait, what? I didn't know about this. But yeah, like that is kind of the question of like, would people recognize that that's him or not, or just think it was a weird detail? um, and then I don't know what it means. Like the tombstones project over the cliff. Like I'm getting the image of like there's so many that they like jut out over the cliff, but that doesn't sound right. um, and that's another thing. I'm complaining a lot about the last voyage of the Demeter, but like there are a lot of things to enjoy about the movie, and I feel like just if you're not super familiar with Dracula, you'll go and you'll be like, yeah, that was an interesting movie. That was an enjoyable, couple hours. But if you know Dracula, like there's so many things that they could have done, that they didn't, and it's like, why didn't they? Because that's another image that, as far as I remember, they did not include. They did not include the dog jumping off, and I did remember, like, that's such a striking image of just like it hits the harbor, and the minute it hits the harbor, a dog jumps out, and it's like, ooh, like I like that. I wish they included that because they could have. It so happened that there was no one at the moment on Tate Hill Pier, as all those whose houses are in close proximity were either in bed or were out on the heights above. Thus the Coast Guard on duty on the eastern side of the harbour, who at once ran down to the little pier, was the first to climb on board. The men working the searchlight, after scouring the entrance of the harbour, without seeing anything, then turned the light on the derelict and kept it there. The Coast Guard ran aft, and when he came beside the wheel, bent over to examine it, and recoiled at once, as though under some. I guess I'm much more tired than I thought I was. The Coast Guard ran off, and when he came beside the wheel, bent over to examine it, and recoiled at once, as though under some sudden emotion. Okay, maybe it is the sentence that's weird. Because I feel like, and recoiled as though under, yeah, at once as though under. I think there's too many, what are those prepositions in there? And recoiled under some sudden emotion, I think would work better. This seemed to pique general curiosity, and quite a number of people began to run. What do you mean it seemed to pique general curiosity? I feel like that should just pique general curiosity. It is a good way round from the West Cliff by the drawbridge to Tate Hill Pier, but your correspondent is a fairly good runner and came well ahead of the crowd. When I arrived, however, I found already assembled on the pier a crowd, whom the Coast Guard and police refused to allow to come on board. With the courtesy of the chief boatman, I was, as your correspondent, permitted to climb on deck, and was one of a small group who saw the dead seaman whilst actually lashed to the wheel. So is correspondent like a journalist in back then, or does it mean something different? Is he more of just, well, I don't know if it's a he, but is it just somebody who who's just like, yeah, I saw it and I want to tell people, and so maybe they are more of a writer than a journalist would be. But why would they be let on to the boat? Why do they get special permission unless they're press? It was no wonder that the Coast Guard was surprised, or even awed, for not often can such a sight have been seen. The man was simply fastened by his hands, tied one over the other to a spoke of the wheel. What does that mean, tied one over the other? Like like this? How did he do that himself? I don't know. Between the inner hand and the wood was a crucifix, a set of beads on which it was fastened, being around both wrists and wheel, and all kept fast by the binding cords. The poor fellow may have been seated at one time, but the flapping and buffeting of the sails had worked through the rudder of the wheel and dragged him to and fro, so that the cords with which he was tied had cut the flesh to the bone. Wait. Is he not a skeleton? Did they just say corpse? I very much had the image of him being a skeleton, but I could totally be wrong about that. Yeah, it does say corpse. Okay, so he is. Okay, so okay. So it is still the captain. He still has his flesh and everything. That is a spooky image of just like the rope cut into him so much that that particular part is cut to the bone. Don't like that image. I mean, I don't, but I do. I like how spooky it is, but it makes me uncomfy. Poor fellow. Oh, no, I already did that. Accurate note was made of the same things, and Dr. Surgeon J.M. Caffian of 33 East Elliot Place came immediately after me, declaring after making his examination that the man must have been dead for quite 2 days. In his pocket was a bottle, carefully corked, empty save for a little roll of paper, which proved to be the addendum to the log. The Coast Guard said the man must have tied up his own hands, fastening the knots with his teeth. Aha, that's how he did it. And the fact that a Coast Guard was the first on board may save some complications. Later on, in the Admiralty Court, for Coast Guards cannot claim the salvage, which is the right of the first civilian entering on a derelict. Already, however, the legal tongues are wagging, and one young law student is loudly asserting that the rights of the owner are already completely sacrificed, his property being held in contravention of the statutes of mortmain, since the tiller, as emblemmanship, is not proof of delegated possession, is held in a dead hand. It is needless to say that the dead steersman has been reverently removed from the place where he held his honourable watch and wore till death. A steadfastness as noble as that of a young Casabianca, and placed in the mortuary to await inquest. Oh no, I was gonna say, like, isn't Casabianca like kind of a playboy, but that's Casanova, isn't it? So, what is Casabianca? Casabianca is a poem by the English poet. Okay, what's it about? As the poem starts, the boy stood on the burning deck, whence all but he had fled. The flame that lit the battle's wreck shone round him o'er the dead. Okay, so maybe it is about somebody who, like, stays with the ship. It's about the true story of a boy who was obedient enough to wait for his father's orders, not knowing that his father is no longer alive. It's perhaps not widely realized that the boy in the poem is French and not English. His nationality is not mentioned. Okay, that doesn't feel that important. How can I actually find the poem? Okay, let's go over here. How long is it? Because that could be fun. Apparently it's also a chair now. Oh yeah, it's not long at all. Okay. Let me put it over here. Oh, I guess I could just put it in the same document. Go back. Oh, it doesn't let me copy it. Okay, I'll use the internet. Oh no. I didn't mean to go like that. Go back, please. Back. Okay. Oh. Can I please go over there? The angle isn't great, but hopefully you can still read it. So I'm getting this from a place called Poetry Archive. Casabianca. The boy stood on the burning deck, whence all but he had fled. The flame that lit the battle's wreck shone round him o'er the dead. Yet beautiful and bright he stood, as born to rule the storm, a creature of heroic blood, a proud though childlike form. The flames rolled on, he would not go without his father's word. That father, faint in death below, his voice no longer heard. He called aloud, "Say, father, say, if yet my task is done." He knew not that the chieftain lay unconscious of his son. "Speak, father," once again he cried, if I may yet be gone." But the booming shots replied, and fast the flames rolled on. Upon his brow he felt their breath, and in his waving hair, and looked from that lone post of death in still yet brave despair, and shouted but once more aloud, "My father, must I stay?" While o'er him fast, through sail and shroud, the wreathing fires made way. They wrapped the ship in splendor wild, they caught the flag on high, and steamed above the gallant child like banners in the sky. There came a burst of thunder sound, the boy, oh, where was he? Ask of the winds that far around with fragments strewed the sea. With mast and helm and pennon fair, that well had borne their part, but the noblest thing which perished there was that young, faithful heart. That is a sad poem, but also very, very accurate to a very accurate allusion. A very accurate allusion for them. Oops, wrong thing. For them to use. So, I don't know why we're talking about, like, courts and stuff. Again, it doesn't really feel that necessary to talk about. And I don't know, I like the image of the legal tongues are wagging. I don't know, I have no idea what all this means. Already the sudden storm is passing, and its fierceness is abating. Crowds are scattering homeward, and the sky is beginning to redden over the Yorkshire wolds. I shall send in time for your next issue further details of the derelict ship which found her way so miraculously into harbor in the storm. Whitby. Whitby is the place. Is the writer also using it as their name? Oh, there's an ad break. Yeah, he's just a corpse. Sorry, I didn't see what you said, but yeah. I guess when it said that his flesh went to the bone, my mind went skeleton and stuck with it. There is a kitty. Actually, there are two kitties. I don't know if you can... Oh, yeah. You can see Bo curled up on the ground. I'd go pet him, but I don't want to wake him and disturb him. So cute, Bo. Aw, he's twitching. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, cutie pie. Oh, precious. Precious little baby. Alright, just a few more seconds. It's funny, I feel like you don't usually see my pants on these streams. Usually I am wearing like a normal shirt and then pajama pants. And granted, in some ways these are pretty good pants to show off because they're nice pants. But they're very brightly colored and Halloween related. Okay. Mina Murray's journal, 8th of August. Lucy was very restless all night, and I too could not sleep. The storm was fearful, and as it boomed loudly among the chimney pots, it made me shudder. When a sharp puff came, it seemed to be like a distant gun. Strangely enough, Lucy did not wake, but she got up twice and dressed herself. Fortunately, each time I awoke in time and managed to undress her without waking her, and got her back to bed. And it's a very strange thing, this sleepwalking, As soon as her will is thwarted in any physical way, her intention, if there be any, disappears, and she yields herself almost exactly to the routine of her life. Early in the morning, we both got up and went down to the harbor to see if anything had happened in the night. There were very few people about, and though the sun was bright and the air clear and fresh, the big grim-looking waves that seemed dark themselves, because the foam that topped them was like snow, forced themselves into the narrow mouth of the harbor, like a bullying man going through a crowd. Somehow I felt glad that Jonathan was not on the sea last night, but on land. But oh, is he on land or sea? Where is he, and how? I'm getting fearfully anxious about him. If I only knew what to do, and could do anything. I do like the distant gun image. And I do think it's kind of funny, the image of, like, she's just getting up and putting on her Sunday best, and Mina's like, nope, get that off, put your PJs back on. I do like a bullying man going through the crowd. That's a good image too. And yeah, exactly. Is he? Forget if he had to go through sea. It's interesting that she doesn't comment on the newspaper clipping at all. She isn't like, oh wow, that was wild. Man, corpse strapped to the steering wheel. Crazy stuff. She's just like, Lucy dressed herself and I undressed her. Okay, I think I still want to do this one just to complete the articles. That feels like a better stopping place. August 9th. Cutting from the Daily Graph, 9th of August. Pasted in Mina Murray's journal. From a correspondent. Would be. 9th of August. The sequel to the strange arrival of the derelict in the storm last night is almost more startling than the thing itself. See, there you go! That's how you start! It turns out that the schooner is a Russian from Varna and is called the Demeter. She's almost entirely in ballast of silver sand, with only a small amount of cargo, a number of great wooden boxes filled with mold. This cargo was consigned to a would-be solicitor, Mr. S.F. Billington of 7 The Crescent, who this morning went abroad and formally took possession of the goods consigned to him. Is that Jonathan's boss? Like Samuel Billington, I think his name is? The Russian consul, too, acting for the charter party, took formal possession of the ship and paid all harbor dues, etc. See, like, you could just say that. You don't have to talk about who owns the ship. What's the law? You can just say, yeah, Russians came and collected it. Alright. Nothing is talked about here today except the strange coincidence. The officials of the Board of Trade have been most exacting in seeing that every compliance has been made with existing regulations. As the matter is to be a 9 days wonder, they are evidently determined that there shall be no cause of after complaint. A good deal of interest was abroad concerning the dog which landed when the ship struck, and more than a few of the members of the SPCA, which is very strong in Whitby, have tried to befriend the animal. That is wild to hear in an old story, too. To the general disappointment, however, it was not to be found. It seems to have disappeared entirely from the town. It may be that it was frightened and made its way onto the moors, where it is still hiding in terror. There are some who look with dread on such a possibility, lest later on it should in itself become a danger, for it is inevitably a fierce brute. Early this morning, a large dog, a half-bred mastiff belonging to a coal merchant close to Tate Hill Pier, was found dead in the roadway opposite to its master's yard. It had been fighting, and manifestly it had a savage opponent, for its throat was torn away, and its belly was slit open as if with a savage claw. Now, why you gotta kill a dog, Dracula? Like, people... Okay. Dogs, though, I feel like dog blood surely is not as satisfying. And also, you got a whole tasty ship full of people. You really gotta go after the dog? Later. By the kindness of the Board of Trade Inspector, I have been permitted to look over the logbook of the Demeter, which was in order up to within 3 days, but contained nothing of special interest except as to facts of missing men. I'm sorry. Talking about a monster trying to kill them is not of interest? Are you serious? Okay. I see in the next sentence he says the paper in the bottle. Okay, so the logbook is not the same, not where the logs were. Okay. The greatest interest, however, is with regard to the paper found in the bottle, which was today produced at the inquest, and a more strange narrative that the two between them unfold it has not been my lot to come across. As there is no motive for concealment, I am permitted to use them, and accordingly send you a rescript, simply omitting the technical details of seamanship and supercargo. So you're gonna include all the technical details of who owns the property and the technical details of the storm and the clouds. But when it gets to seamanship, nah, I gotta take those out. Okay. It almost seems as though the captain had been seized with some kind of mania before he had got well into blue water, and that this had developed persistently throughout the voyage. You found the man tied to the steering wheel with a cross, dead. You think, and he's the only man on the ship. Sure, maybe it was mania. But also, maybe there's something to this. Like, something killed everyone else on the ship. Maybe it was the captain. But there's a decent chance it wasn't. There's a decent chance that there's at least some truth to what's going on. Even if it wasn't some monster, something killed everybody on the ship. Alright. Of course, my statement must be taken cum grano, since I am writing from the dictation of clerk of the Russian consul, who kindly translated for me, time being short. Oh, interesting. Okay, so it was written in Russian, it was translated. Oh, so this must have been, not... This is from Dracula Daily. This must have been, Okay, let me find... Because I feel like usually when they have editing notes, they put it in a different font. But I noticed that, and I will tend to omit those. So why did I not omit this one? Okay, so this is the August 8th one. Yes, okay, so it's actually the August 9th one. But the Dracula Daily's note is an extensive weather report. Yes, accurate. Okay, so it was in a different font, or it wasn't in a different font, it was just indented. It was indented, and there is like a red thing on the side, so I should have seen it. And apparently I didn't. Yeah, so I guess since it's here, I'll just read it and then delete it. Editor Matt here in the original text are the passages that are labeled Log of the Demeter. I've placed these throughout in the dates that the author marked them in the log, and you've already been reading them in real time as they happen in your email. It's a change to Stoker's timing, since it's here in the original text presented as one big flashback. Always loved this part, and I think drawing it out over time is more fun. Sorry, Bram. Okay. So I'm writing about I'm writing from the dictation of a clerk for the Russian consul who kindly translated for me, time being short. Of course, the verdict was an open one. There's no evidence to adduce, and whether or not the man himself committed the murders, there is now none to say. Okay, so yes, they are thinking about the crew is gone, and they're thinking that he did it. Okay. The folk here hold almost universally that the captain is simply a hero, and he is to be given a public funeral. Why are you... Okay, there we go. Given a public funeral. Already it is arranged that his body is to be taken with the train boats up train of boats up the Esk for a peace, then brought back to Tate Hill Pier and up the Abbey steps, for he is to be buried in the churchyard in the cliff. The owners of more than 100 boats have already given in their names as wishing to follow him to the grave. No trace has ever been found of the great dog, at which there is much mourning, for the public opinion in its present state, he would, I believe, be adopted by the town. Tomorrow we'll see the funeral, and so we'll end this one more mystery of the sea. That's really weird, that they're like, people want to know about the dog. We're just kind of curious. There was a pet dog who was, killed kind of brutally. We're thinking it's maybe by this dog. And then they're like, it's so sad we haven't found the dog. We totally adopt him. And it's like, after it bit the throat out of another dog, are you sure about that? You sure? This feels like an I can fix him mentality, which, usually doesn't work out so well. It is nice that they think the captain is a hero and that they're gonna give him a nice burial. I do wonder why the consul wasn't like, no, let's take him back to Russia and bury him with his family, But, kind of interesting how we were just talking about how that graveyard is full of people who died at sea. And in this case, it is, yes, there is a captain who is buried there, but his body will actually be there. They have the body, but he didn't live here. Kind of the opposite of everybody else. But yeah, okay, so maybe I was too harsh on it. Maybe it does make sense that they just think that he killed everybody. But yeah. But yeah, I think I'm going to, I'm not spaced out right. I think, let's see. She is talking about the Demeter. I was kind of hoping to finish the arc. Yeah, I think, okay, let's do one more, because we have the funeral here. Alright, August 10th, Mina Murray's journal, 10th of August. The funeral of the poor sea captain today was most touching. Every boat in the harbour seemed to be there, and the coffin was carried by captains all the way from Tate Hill Pier up to the churchyard. Lucy came with me, and we went early to our old seat, whilst the cortege of boats went up the river to the viaduct and came down again. We had a lovely view, and saw the procession nearly all the way. The poor fellow was laid to rest quite near our seat, so that we stood on it when the time came and saw everything. Poor Lucy seemed much upset. She was restless and uneasy all the time, and I cannot but think that her dreaming at night is telling on her. She is quite odd in one thing. She will not admit to me that there is any cause for restlessness, or if there be, she does not understand it herself. There is an additional cause in that poor old Mr. Swales was found dead this morning on our seat, his neck being broken. He had evidently, as the doctor said, fallen back in the seat in some sort of fright, but there was a look of fear and horror on his face, and the men said made them shudder. Poor dear old man, perhaps he had seen death with his dying eyes. Lucy is so sweet and sensitive that she feels influences more acutely than other people do. Just now she was quite upset by a little thing which I did not much heed. I'm very fond of animals. I'll come back to that in a second. So, the other day, he's like, oh, I make light of it because I don't want to be afraid of death. And then she starts sobbing. And here, she's like, yeah, Mr. Swales, he's dead. His neck was broken and he had a look of horror on his face. Moving on, she doesn't seem the least bit upset about it. And it's like, I feel like your reactions are a bit out of proportion here. It's like, maybe he really did see death. It's like, that thought made you sob the other day, and now it's like, oh, weird. He maybe did see death. All right. Okay. Lucy's so sweet and sensitive that she feels influences more acutely than other people do. Just now, she was quite upset by a little thing which I did not much heed, though I am myself very fond of animals. One of the men who came up here often to look for. Ugh, I really do need to stop after this because I'm tripping way too much. One of the men who came up here often to look for the boats was followed by his dog. The dog is always with him. They are both quiet persons, and I never saw the man angry, nor heard the dog bark. During the service, the dog would not come to its master, who was on the seat with us, but kept a few yards off, barking and howling. Its master spoke to it gently, and then harshly, and then angrily, but it would neither come nor cease to make a noise. It was in a sort of fury, with its eyes savage, and all its hairs bristling out like a cat's tail when puss is on the warpath. Finally, the man too got angry and jumped down and kicked the dog, and then took it by the scruff of the neck and half dragged and half threw it on the tombstone on which the seat is fixed. The moment it touched the stone, the poor thing became quiet and fell all into a tremble. It did not try to get away, but crouched down, quivering and cowering. It was in such a pitiable state of terror that I tried, though without effect, to comfort it. Lucy was full of pity, too, but she did not attempt to touch the dog, but looked at it in an agonized sort of way. I greatly fear that she is of too supersensitive a nature to go through the world without trouble. She'll be dreaming of this tonight, I'm sure. The whole agglomeration of things, the ship steered into port by a dead man, his attitude tied to the wheel with a crucifix and beads, the touching funeral, the dog, now furious and now in terror, all afford material for her dreams. I think it will be best for her to go to bed tired out physically, so I shall take her on a long walk by the cliffs to Robin Hood's Bay and back. She ought not to have much inclination for sleepwalking then. Mina, I feel like you should be upset about the fact that a man threw and kicked his dog. I'm also sorry I didn't give a content warning for that, because this comment here, they're actually, in all the Dracula Daily entries, they have a little like, I don't know, subtitle. Like we get an extensive weather report. And this one was, in which someone kicks a dog. And I put it in a comment here thinking I would see this. And then be like, hey, content warning, someone's gonna kick a dog. But totally didn't see it. Totally forgot. So sorry about that. But yeah, she's like, I love animals, but like, I didn't, she's too sensitive. It's like, let's see, where was it? First of all, you're not bothered by your old man friend having his neck broken and a look of horror on his face. Like, first of all, that should bother you. And then second of all, that, kicking it, throwing it on the tombstone, like, that's not okay. Like, I get that the dog was, like, making a lot of noise, and especially if the funeral is still going on, I get that he wants to shut it up, but, like, I do not condone cruelty of animals, and so I feel like, yeah, you should be more concerned about that, Mina. And I don't feel like Lucy is being super sensitive and being like, I'm not a fan of what just happened here. Especially because she just, like, is watching a funeral and is already upset. Like, I feel like it's valid for her to be upset. Also, this also feels like, this feels simultaneously, like, very modern and very not modern. It's like a weird phrase. But it's interesting that they don't say, like, that anything about Dracula. Like, we don't see a dog go by, we don't see a strange silhouette. It's just, this dog is barking like crazy, which is interesting. Yeah, and then the poor dog, like, was barking, and then it got all afraid after it got thrown and kicked. Yeah, it's like, all she did was, like, look at it in a pitying way, and then you're like, she's too sensitive. It's like, no, you're not sensitive enough. Yeah, and I do not think that going on a walk is gonna help. And yeah, very fair that she does have a lot of stuff to fuel her dreams. Okay. Same day, 11 o'clock p.m. Oh, but I am tired. If it were not that I had made my diary a duty, I should not open it tonight. We had a lovely walk. Lucy, after a while, was in gay spirits, owing, I think, to some dear cows who came nosing towards us in a field close to the lighthouse and frightened the wits out of us. I believe we forgot everything except, of course, personal fear. It seemed to wipe the slate clean and give us a fresh start. We had a capital severe tea at Robin Hood's. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Robin's Hood. But even though I know this is a famous name, Robin Hood's. I guess because I probably see it more like that instead of like that. We had a capital severe tea at Robin Hood's Bay in a sweet little old-fashioned inn, with a bow window right over the seaweed-covered rocks of the strand. I believe we should have shocked the new women with our appetites. Men are more tolerant, bless them. Then we walked home. What does that mean? Oh, I guess they're saying like we were really big eaters, and that's a kind of a not a thing that women tend to be known for. But I don't know what men are more tolerant means. Then we walked home with some, or rather many, stoppages to rest, with our hearts full of a constant dread of wild bulls. Lucy was really tired, and we intended to creep off to bed as soon as we could. The young curate came in, however, and Mrs. Westenra asked him to stay for supper. Lucy and I had both a fight for it with the dusty miller. I know it was a hard fight on my part, and I am quite heroic. I think that some day the bishops must get together and see about breeding up a new class of curates who don't take supper, no matter how much they may be pressed to, and who will know when the girls are tired. Lucy is asleep and breathing softly. She has more color in her cheeks than usual, and looks so sweet. If Mr. Holmwood fell in love with her, seeing her only in the drawing-room, I wonder what he would say if he saw her now. Some of the new women writers will someday start an idea that men and women should be allowed to see each other asleep before proposing or accepting. But I suppose the new woman won't condescend in future to accept. She will do the proposing herself. And a nice job she will make of it, too. There's some consolation in that. I'm so happy tonight, because dear Lucy seems better. I really believe she has turned the corner, and that we are over her troubles, dreaming. I should be quite happy if I only knew if Jonathan, God bless and keep him. Interesting, we have some feminism stuff here. And I don't know, I think she's saying she supports it. At first it seemed like she was like, these feminists are saying that men and women will see each other sleep. Whore. But then she's like, but women will propose in the future and she'll do a great job. Fun. So I don't know what a curate is. I guess I can just use I'm using the definition thing. A member of the clergy engaged as assistant to a vicar, rector, or parish priest. Gotcha. Okay. So just like a church dude. Yeah, I don't know why. I've never really used that feature very much of just like, you can just highlight a word and click define. I always like type it up. And like, I've been doing that all the time in this series, and I can just pull it up and we can both look at it. But anyways, I don't know what Lucy and I both had a fight for it with the Dusty Miller. Like, I don't know what a Dusty Miller has to do with anything. And I don't know how she's heroic. I don't know what this fight part is about. But it is funny that she's describing herself that way. We'll see if that remains to be true. Probably is. From what I know, what little I know of what happens to her in the book, she probably is. And I do think this is funny. It's especially funny because it's kind of like almost the idea that like the clergy aren't just like normal people who decide to take a job as clergy, but they're like bred in they're like bred on a farm or in test tubes or something. Like, yeah, we gotta make a new class of clergy. Uh, and then I do like that they won't take supper and they'll know when girls are tired. Very cute. Yeah, I'm not gonna look at the next bit, even if it is related. I need to stop now. I'm too tired. But yes, it's been fun. I have enjoyed it. I hope that you have. Yeah, we've got page 20 of 44, so we're pretty much exactly halfway through. But it has been a good time. Is anybody you know streaming? I don't know. What could I look up? I guess I could just type in Dracula and see if something comes up. Oh, somebody's playing Castlevania. Yeah, we could do that. A pizza not. It's not. I think I've gone to yeah, I was wondering why I haven't seen you advertise your streams lately. But yeah, I think let's do something new today. Let's go to a new person. Oh, wrong way. Wait. Okay. But yes, it's been a good time. I will have to do the rest tomorrow or whatever day I am able to get to it. But it's been fun, and I'm very grateful for you hanging out with me. And hope you have a good night. Goodbye. Well, not quite goodbye yet. All right. Goodbye.